Yeah.
I'm gonna help you on. I'm looking for it coming up, but I'll help you on sharing it out.
Okay. Let me update the title first
All right,
before we do that.
here we go.
I was telling Brother Azar that I had to purchase a premium deal for Twitter today for X.
Why?
Sunday they changed their policy that you can't live stream unless you're premium subscriber.
Sunday they did. We'll
Yep.
have those.
How much was it?
$82 a year, I think. Some 82 or 86. I can't remember, something like that.
Interesting.
That number probably has some significance to Elon Musk.
Right. Exactly. Okay.
Oh, we got it going. We got it going.
What do we got?
I'm just sharing it out, man.
Are you? You didn't let me change the title.
No, it'll change in
It's
there.
all good.
What's
all good.
the what is
I'll
why
do it on
is it
Twitter.
not letting us share the whole list anymore? Do you know?
Are you on your phone?
Yes.
Do you have the video pulled up?
Oh, let me see. Let me see. I do.
Because you have to have the video pulled up, and you have to have.
Uh,
Does that work?
so yeah. Way to go, buddy.
It's the
Man,
weirdest thing. Like, why?
why did they do that?
I have no idea. I am afraid.
Don't be afraid. Fear not,
Right?
for I am with thee.
I'm
I said to
afraid
ignite.
that today it won't be on Twitter because I think it
Boo.
has to be approved.
Oh, does it?
That's what I'm thinking. Because we definitely have a premium account.
So they said, give us your money and then we'll decide.
Exactly right. All right. Well, that stinks.
I've got a UPCI Sages.
Yeah.
Sages.
Okay. Let me do a post on X real quick.
I think they should have the tagline, the new UPCI Sages. They should have the tagline, what sage of life are you in? Right?
All of the dads would appreciate that.
Oh man, it's out, bro. All the stuff.
Okay. All right. I just posted that on Twitter. Let me pull up YouTube. Brother Zar, we have to pull up YouTube because we every once in a while we have the bots. The bots try to take over.
The bots.
Yeah,
The AI robots that are not real people. It is real. It's crazy.
That's interesting.
yeah, we get some very unique comments, and sometimes
Wow.
it's just like you can tell it's just not. These are not real people and
Yeah.
whatever. So
Interesting.
okay, all right. The other thing, Ken,
Uh-oh.
is do you see the number of viewers
On
on
Facebook?
Restream? Do you see?
I never do.
Oh, you never do?
Uh-uh.
Well, it has removed that number on how many people are live. So just once again, technical challenges.
Okay.
Sounds good.
See, like
We'll get to
here's
that.
a bot on YouTube masquerading as John Hummel. JD Vance thoughts question mark.
Now
It's
that
very interesting.
you know that's a real Hummel question since he's coming out with an Ohio guy. So, all right, I think we're good. We're all shared out, Ken.
100%.
All shared out. We're ready to go. Brother Zar, you ready to go?
I am.
All right, let's do it. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Mobilized Church Podcast. This is Chris Dillingham alongside my big brother, Ken Dillingham Jr. the third on a beautiful Tuesday. We had a good weekend, didn't we, Ken?
It was, man, it was amazing. Another opportunity, ministry opportunity to minister together in Maryland, DC district, along with one of our former guests and a longtime friend, Jimmy Tony. So
Yeah.
go conference in Maryland, DC. It was fabulous. We both stayed and preached at campuses of the Antioch Church in the Annapolis, Baltimore area. So it was fabulous. It was great doing. I mean, Chris, we're the Sons of Thunder. We do ministry together.
It was amazing, man. It was so awesome, and had a great time, man. Just what a great district. The only negative, it was 1,000 degrees in Baltimore. It was unbelievable. It was so hot and humid and whatever. So other than that, it was an amazing weekend. We're glad to be home and ready to rock and roll. We have a very special guest with us today. We're very excited to welcome in. We call him the third man in the booth. We're glad to have Dr. Shady Zar with us today. Welcome, Dr. Zar. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you very much for the invitation. It's an honor to be with you. I love this podcast. I've enjoyed and learned a lot through this journey with you guys. I feel like we're friends without you knowing me much. But thank you very much for the invitation. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. I've had the opportunity to have Brother Zar come, and only 40 minutes from us, something like that, 30, 40 minutes from here in Toledo. And we had some connections. We had a young man that had family in our church that lives up that way, and started going to church there in Ann Arbor, and then just kind of mutual connections. And so, man, we had a chance to meet a few weeks ago and felt like we could have talked all night. It was like, I knew I didn't want to keep you. I knew you had a drive, but I'm like, man, we could have just kept this conversation going. It's just amazing to hear.
You said you met like 4 hours, right?
Yeah, I was like 4.5, something like that.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
We
had very gracious hosts, so they accommodated us talking all the time.
They did.
That's awesome. I like how it does bear mentioning, Chris, that you did refer to up there instead of saying, I mean, you are officially. It almost feels like you're officially a Buckeye. I don't know, folks. This is a monumental moment in the Mobilized Church.
No. I stay out of that, man. I'm an Illini, and so we don't get engaged in that stuff. We don't beat anybody anyway in football, so we don't talk the team up north or whatever. So we don't do that. So we want to start today, Brother Zar, if you could just share with us, one of the things we talk about is stories tell the story. And Jesus constantly used stories to illustrate kingdom principles. Our story of transformation tells the story of Jesus' transformation. So share with the audience a little bit your story and your background, kind of where you came from and how you have reached the place where you are today. We'll talk about multicultural ministries and all the things, but tell us kind of how you got to this place where you are today.
Well, thank you for allowing me to share this. I was born in the 70s in Jordan, in the Middle East, in a city on the Red Sea called Aqaba. And a tourist city, very nice city, but it's very hot. And we had one church in town, which was the Catholic Church. And we lived probably, 25 yards from the church. And that was my school as well. So I went to the Catholic Church, Catholic school. I was an altar boy. Probably 7th grade, the priest offered me to maybe go to Bethlehem to become a minister. And my mom at that time said, no, I was the firstborn child, and she was a teacher. My dad was an accountant, and I had three more siblings that came after years. But the connection with the church started really early in my life. And after that, you go to public schools, and you end up having, in Jordan, it's a 98% Muslim population. Sunday is a work day. So school day, work day. So we ended up disconnected from the church for a while, and then went to college. And again, college Sunday is a work day and everything. And by the time I wanted to get married, I found out that I was baptized as an Anglican. I was not really baptized Catholic, so I had to do confirmation in the Anglican church so I can get married, because you need the certificate to do that. When we got married, me and my wife, we said she also grew up in a Catholic church, Catholic school, but her parents were not very consistent. But she loved the Lord, and she wanted actually so she read her Bible. She wanted to connect with God. When we got married, we said, let's find a church. We looked around, we visited different churches. We felt it's more of a social interaction. The Middle East have different denominations, but in Jordan, the predominant ones are Catholic or Orthodox. We do have some evangelical churches as well, Baptist. And so during my life in Jordan, I got exposed to Greek Orthodox theology through my uncle, who's a priest. Went to Catholic school, went to Baptist Sunday schools, because the Catholic school didn't have any. Then in the summer, we would go camps with the Anglican school. So we got exposed to different things throughout life, but we never found something that really we connecting with, until the Lord took us to Saudi Arabia for a job opportunity. Things got so tight in Jordan, and I think partially because of my faith. But then when we were pushed to go to Saudi Arabia, we were introduced to underground churches who meet on Fridays, which are the days of the day off of the week. And through these underground churches, we start experiencing with other families. Usually every group would be 20 to 25 families. We start experiencing preachers who are actually just teaching the word, and then we do some worship sermons. And we thought, we're not doing traditional stuff, because it's an amalgam of different people, different nations, different Christian background, and we're in secret. So we're not going to have the incense and all the candles and all the other stuff. So we experienced the presence of God for the first time in Saudi Arabia, in Riyadh. And we heard tongues spoken there for the first time.
Oh, wow.
And they had some visitors who come in on business trips, but they're actually preachers. So they would travel between these groups. And I don't know how many groups there were. They were separating us intentionally. I do believe it was led by Assemblies of God ministers who came from Egypt. And these gentlemen who led the groups secretly, they were my colleagues in my work. So when I'm working at this new medical center that is freshly opened, no patients yet, we would spend hours and hours talking about the Lord, about the Bible. So they would disciple me, and they would show me scriptures. And my wife is involved in Bible studies at our house with their wives. And then when we go do all these church services, so we really found the Lord in the land of Islam and in Saudi Arabia. And after that, when we experienced people speaking in tongues and the power of God and the presence of God, we said, we want to go somewhere that has that same feeling. We're not going to go back to traditional church. So we ended up back in Jordan for 6 months before we moved to the United States to get our visas and paperwork. And we attended Assemblies of God church there. And we felt the same presence. We were happy. That we were not taught about baptism. We were not taught about the Holy Ghost infilling. And then when we moved to the United States, we tried to search for the same presence of God. We had to reach out to our Assemblies of God pastor in Jordan and said, hey, can you give us some names of churches that we feel the same presence? And he gave us an apostolic church name close to us in Ann Arbor, Solid Rock Church of Ann Arbor. And when we walked in, just the same presence of God we felt in Saudi Arabia, we felt in Jordan. We felt, okay, this is the place for us. And The church was loving and caring, and that was in 2007. So me and my wife, we started a Bible study with Pastor Jones every Sunday before service, and we did spend 2 years in that Bible study every Sunday for an hour, and that was our discipleship journey. In addition to trying to invite him over to our house and visit and do that, so we didn't understand what discipleship was, but looking back, I think this is how we were discipled, one on one with our pastor, and we received the Holy Ghost. We got baptized, and our kids got involved in the church, received the Holy Ghost and baptized. 2018, I felt a call to ministry, and I got my license with the Michigan district. 2019, I was asked to serve as the multicultural ministry coordinator for the Michigan district. And I think Brother Chavis, I got involved with MCM at that time. We did some training sessions in the district, and he attended some of them, and he felt like that I could serve on the Middle Eastern evangelism ministry within multicultural ministry. That ministry was kind of quiet without leadership for a few years at that time. And so me and my wife took that on as well to try to reignite that interest in the fellowship and reaching Middle Eastern people and to equip them. Since we both spoke Arabic and we both, have reasonable English as well, and then we have experienced the culture. When we came to the U.S., I was in my mid-30s, so my culture is still Middle Eastern. My language, my Arabic. So we thought we can stay in this country by God's permission and grace, because we believe the way we stayed as a different story, but how we ended up being here, but a lot of visa issues and work stuff and challenges. But I was here only for 1 year to do a training in my radiology training as a physician, and the Lord opened a door for us to stay. And with time, we understood that the Lord brought us here for a reason. Our burden is to equip the North American church to reach the Middle Eastern population and the Muslim community in North America, because I believe this will be the gateway to reach out to these countries that are access challenged, and that we can, from this point here, because we have the freedom and the constitutional rights to share our faith, that will take the gospel through the same people. They can go back to their countries. They have the influence, they have the family ties, they have the cultural knowledge, they have the passports, they have the language knowledge. So I believe this will be the beginning of a revival in the world that has Muslims, which we have reached 2 billion Muslims now, and out of the 8 billion. And we also have significant number of Middle Eastern people, even Christians in North America. For some time, more than half of the immigrants from the Middle East were Christian. And I think a lot of people here will be surprised, but Christians have been leaving the Middle East to the United States and Canada for more than 120 years because things are getting tight. So not just financially, even from the persecution side, and all the wars that you hear of and all the challenges. So Christians have been leaving the Middle East, and I think probably within my expectation in 20, 30 years, you will not find Christians in Bethlehem anymore.
Wow.
Because they've been, kind of pushed out.
Systematically pushed away, yeah.
And sadly, it's by the Jewish and the Muslim population there.
Mm-hmm.
So
we met a guy. Just hate to interrupt. We actually met a man who's ministering in Nazareth, and he mentioned that in Nazareth it's the same way. That it's very much it's very much like he had a I think Chris wasn't the guy that he was talking about owned like a pizza business or a pizza store or something, and they said we're going to buy your pizza store, and he said, well, it's not for sale, and he said, no, you don't understand, we're going to buy your pizza store. So it was that kind of thing. So right.
Yeah. And that process happened in Iraq, in Syria, in Egypt. It's been a lot of persecution. So we felt like we need to get all the apostolics in North America equipped and ready to reach that harvest I do believe that we need also to support the Christians in the Middle East. But part of that support system is we change the environment there by, if we have more converts in the Middle East that are, or let's say more people who sympathize with the Christian faith, I think that would give them a little more freedom to move and stay. But I do believe a lot of my family members are out of the country. My brothers, all of them are either here or working on it. My cousins, me. So out of my own family, my circle itself, it's everybody's trying to leave, and they're going to a land of freedom here where you can practice and you can share. So I think as apostolics, we're uniquely positioned to this harvest because with our faith in the oneness of God, we don't have any barriers to reach out to a Muslim.
Right.
And also we do practice and we believe that modesty and holy living is part of our biblical teaching. And that is also cannot be an obstacle. The immodesty is an obstacle for people from the Middle East, Christians and Muslims, to convert because they're conservative people. And the Christianity picture that we have in the United States and Canada is mostly Hollywood painted, and that picture is not really appealing to somebody to become an American Christian. So a lot of even Christians who come to the U.S., they don't want to go to an American church. They want to go to a traditional Jordanian, Syrian, Syriac, Armenian church, right? Because there's
Yeah.
a cultural aspect of it. So we are unknown to the Muslims that we have. There are apostolic people that believe in one God and that can live modest life. And they do not know also that we have the access to the power of God through the miraculous moves of the Holy Spirit, and a lot of the Muslims and Christians are actually going to superstitious stuff to try to get God's favor, God's power to be manifested. So these people are seeking the power of God and they can't find it, either in traditional churches or in their mosques. And we do have all these answers. We are well positioned as apostolics to tackle the hardest harvest to reach, because I do believe they're the hardest from theological perspective as Muslims, because they are told that the Bible is corrupt, you cannot touch it or read it, and they are also taught by their faith that if you leave your faith, you can get killed, and that also all the if somebody converts, that they have so much pressure on them to bring them back to the fold of their family and their culture, because there's shame element to it. They're collective and they put shame on each other. So it just very hard people to reach. And I do believe we are equipped to do that, spiritually equipped, but a lot of times we feel like we're not ready culturally. We have a gap with the language and the culture. And I believe my role and my wife's role here and our Middle Eastern evangelism team is to bridge the cultural gap and the language gap as much as we can by training people how to interact, by giving material in Arabic and Persian, supplying videos and maybe even a written material and Bible studies, and also we're going further with this. We're going to try to actively train people, because I do believe we have an opportunity now to equip apostolics even when they go to the mission field. We can equip them before they hit that field by cultural and language training here in North America. So that's kind of an overview of the journey and what we're doing here.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So there's so many different ways that we want to go with the conversation today, and definitely want to talk about that piece of it there about there's definitely seems like there's an awareness and a burden, particularly among millennials and Gen Z. There's a calling to go to we call access challenge nations. There's a strong there's a pull of the spirit, I feel like, to do that. And so we definitely want to get into that. Before we get to that, you mentioned that your family and a lot of people that you're aware of, it just kind of generally speaking, there are a lot of Middle Eastern and Muslim people that are leaving their countries and coming to America and looking for opportunity for freedom. So we have a harvest field right here in our own backyard, where you and I live. It's definitely a very prevalent community around us. We see the growth of it. Even in my own personal neighborhood, we've seen a massive influx and growth in our neighborhood. So one of the fascinating conversations we had a few weeks ago, and I'd like you to share a little bit about this, is tell us what you feel like are the major challenges that we face as North Americans in reaching not just Middle Eastern people, but a lot of different cultures that come from collective cultures versus the American individualistic cultures. Talk to us a little bit about those challenges and how do we position ourselves? How do we train people? How do we get people aware of this to effectively reach into these communities and ethnicities that are built on collective culture?
Yeah.
Before you begin, maybe define collective culture. It might be a term that people aren't familiar with.
Yes, definitely. So a collective community is a community that people grow up in a group all their lives with a psychological and physical dependence on that group, which the group will support and help you, but you owe them in a loyalty that is forever, right? So in reality, all the earth until historically and until the last 60 years, every community and every culture was collective, because there was no point in time where a human being can independently go get a job, have of money, and then spend it on what he wants to buy of services from any kind. And he doesn't have to cut his lawn, he doesn't have to paint his roof. In the past, people have to depend on others, other family members or villagers, or somebody in the same vicinity to survive, to live life normally. What happened in capitalism after the 40s and the 60s is that we have some countries who developed significant affluence to the normal middle class person, that they can just go a job and then go and don't depend on anybody. I have roadside assistance, I have life insurance, I have renters insurance, I have a health and disability, and so you can actually live without the need of a family, right? And these countries include the United States, Canada, Scandinavian countries, Germany, England, and Australia. So these are the individualist countries that people do not have to depend on a group for their survival and their prosperity, and therefore basic needs. The rest of the world is collective. So the basic culture in the world is collective. Now, you go to the Philippines, you depend on your cousins for babysitting, to take you to the airport, to go to the doctor with you, to lend you money, to fix your car, to paint your house, to move. I mean, this is how life is in the rest of the world. Now, in the United States, I believe the reason we shifted, we are the most individualist country in the world. And the reason, I think, that's my analysis, I could be wrong, we have freedom of speech. So I can offend people, my family members, with my speech, and I don't have to conform to their political or social views, right? Because this is protected by the Constitution. Mm-hmm. Then I have long distances. I will leave my country, my place of birth, and I can live in the U.S. and I might never see my cousins and uncles and grandfathers. The concept of reunion was foreign to me, because it's like we're always in reunion in the collective communities. We live by each other. We stay close to each other. Mm-hmm. And then you have the concept of financially independent, that I only see my family over Thanksgiving, and I tolerate my weird uncle or my nagging aunt or something for a night, but I don't have to tolerate them if I'm independent financially and socially and psychologically. So and nobody would criticize you for going to California, living there and living on your own, because this is how the country goes. And you want to be unique, you want to be different, you want to dress different, you can believe whatever, so and you can express these feelings. In a collective community, all this is a no-no, because we don't want to lose any member of that group, because we depend on you. I want you to be in my group because I need you. I will need you, and you will need me. So we tolerate each other. We live with each other. We spend a lot of time with each other. I study what's best for the group in a collective community. Until now, my dad does not know that I was not going to medical school. I wanted to be a hotel manager on a beach somewhere. Growing up on a beach town, I wanted to study hotel management, but I received a scholarship to go to medical school. And doing that in that part of the world brings honor to the family and brings also financial stability. So I never told my dad that I would like to study that. You do not marry who you want. You marry who your family approves of, because she needs to become part of the family, a contributing part, a peacemaker, a helper, a supporter. So all the decisions we make in life as collective is to serve the group, not to serve the person. And all the ideas that I have, the plans that I have, and all the goals that I have in life is all aligned with my group. And my group is not just my unit family as it's in the United States. My group means my mom and dad and brothers and uncles and cousins and grandfather and all the in-laws from all that, and maybe my tribe. Like I have a tribe in Jordan. They have all the last name, my last name. And because it's a tribal community, we keep up with the names for the seventh grandfather. So I know everyone related to me, and I keep the connections. And because women do not change their last name during marriage, you can also trace all the women to where they came from, which family, which cousin, which uncle. So with that system, it's the collective community is entrenched in your life. So every immigrant, almost, if he's not from Scandinavia, Australia, or England or Canada, they are collective. And this is the biggest, I believe, challenge that we have in the United States to reach out to people, is that the demographics are changing. The last thing I know is almost 85, before the open border kind of situation, 85 million people in the United States have at least one parent from a different culture, which means that different culture is likely to be an immigrant from a collective community, which means that person, household, is growing in a different culture than the normal North American individualist culture. Now, I am not trying to say that the individualist is better or worse than the collective. I believe that both have goods and bads in them. And I can point out a lot of bad things about collective culture. And I can point out a lot of bad things about individual culture.
Sure.
But the purpose here is to say, if you're a collective person, evangelism is easier for you, because you're already in a group, you already know how to tolerate people, you know already how to spend time, your evenings with them, help them, support them, open your house to them, right? So a collective culture, somebody from that background has an advantage in doing evangelism in the United States.
Brother Zar, pardon the interruption, but I believe this is interesting, just simply to highlight that in Luke 9 and 10, particularly Luke 10, when Jesus first sent out the disciples, he sent them without any means of self-sustenance. No change of clothes, no, on and on, the scripture. And what's interesting is he told them to go look for a person of peace. And isn't this, probably when you read Luke 10 very differently than people that, that I pastor from an individualistic culture who say, there's no possible way that you could do that in the United States now. How do you do Luke 10 in the United States of America? But probably from your perspective, you see just what you're saying. Evangelism is much easier, and Jesus was actually leveraging the collective culture in that first missionary journey of his disciples, right?
Well, this is a very interesting, and my mind is going through different directions. First, the Bible was written in a collective context for collective people by collective writers, right? So there was no individualism until the last 67 years. It did not exist, right? So, and the Bible was using all these examples because they were real-time examples. Now, the dependence in the community is that if you have a guest, you take care of your guest and you feed them, because you will be a sojourner one day and somebody will take care of you. So
which is the heartbeat of hospitality. The
Correct.
ministry of hospitality is journey is hard and
Yeah.
life is hard, and somebody's going to come to you in need, and soon you will be in need. And it's
Yes.
that retribution of grace and generosity.
Yes. And reciprocity in that is needed, because if you're a farmer in Ohio, you are more collective than somebody living in downtown New York, right?
Sure.
The New Yorker, nobody's going to walk into my house. I mean, why would you come in and knock on my door? Who are you? I'm not going to open the door for you if you live in New York. But if you're a farmer in Alabama, you depend on your neighbors. So within the United States, there are cultural differences, and there are more collective communities than others. The challenge that we're having now in the newer nation, in the newer younger people, is that they're living more and more individualist life, even not within the family, even it's very even personal, their own bubble. And that will bring us to a point that the apostolic culture, the churches and you and me, are closer to a collective community than the regular American. And that's is one of the cultural gaps that we have with our own community. Why do we stand out? Because we fellowship 2 3 times a week. Nobody does that, right? And then we open our homes for people and we teach Bible studies. There is a cultural difference here. So part of when we put the people on a spectrum between individualist and collective, us, because we follow the Bible, we want to live apostolic life, we find ourselves shifting to more collective life. Now, are we close enough as collectives to somebody who's an immigrant from other cultures? If you have an apostolic who lives probably in a farm area, and he loves the Lord so much, and used to hospitality, and interested in different cultures, and he's technically having exposure with somebody who is from a different culture, he might do a good job, right? You'll have a success story. But most people who live in a city, or we're trying to reach people living in cities who are completely different than us, there is a big gap. And I think bridging that gap uh, is it's a bigger gap than the language gap, because 73% of immigrants say that they speak English, and we can probably get away with teaching them some, or maybe we can get material on global tracks in their own language. But the culture gap is the challenge, because it's so easy to offend people unintentionally when you have that cultural gap. And the United States is considered one of the top accepting people in the world. So Latinos and North Americans accept foreigners so easy, but not to the degree that, hey, you're gonna be in my house, right? I mean, i
Mm.
I don't mind you being my neighbor. I don't mind you be a friend at work, whatever it is. It's fun, it's exciting. Americans see anything different as curious and exciting, and it's fun. If you go to the Middle East, you are not accepted the same way here.
Hmm.
We would reject you because we're a collective
Yeah.
community. We want to preserve our identity.
Yeah. You're an outsider.
Yes, you're an outsider. So
Yeah.
that's one of the negative things about collective culture. Like in Jordan, there are families they call El Halabi. Halabi is Aleppo. If your grandfather came from Aleppo to Jordan, you are still, this becomes your last name. We labeled you forever. You are the Halabi. You
Wow.
are from Aleppo. You never become Jordanian fully, because your name tells me you're from a different country. So that's one of the negative things about collective culture, is everybody is an outsider outside of my own group, and everybody is looked at as a threat. Different is dangerous, not curious.
Could it
Different.
could it be said could it be said that the greater miracle, in Luke 10, we look at we who are particularly Americans who say we have security if we have money, if we have, so all of those things that you said give us the ability to separate ourselves from others, separate ourselves from a collective culture, right? Which is self-sustenance, the
Yeah.
capacity to, the capacity to reject the group,
Yeah.
the tribe, that for us, we look at what Jesus asked them to do, which was to not take scrip or purse or all of the extra things or food and so on and so forth. And we look at it and go, wow, what a miracle. that Jesus sent them out in such vulnerability and he provided for them a bed and food and all of these things. Could it be said that the greatest miracle that was provided was that God gave them people that gave them access to their tribe?
Well, they were Jewish in their own community, right?
Uh-huh.
So out of their name, they know exactly what their faith is, what ethnicity they are in. So if they're going to Jerusalem and the areas around it, then they were sent to their own people. There's no issues, right?
Right.
And but still people might not receive them, and receiving them, part of it is there's a teaching at that time for rabbis is that if you are if you follow your rabbi until you are powdered by the dust of the rabbi's feet, you're walking behind him so close, learning and remembering everything he says, right? So when they go say dust your feet, in a sense that if they're not receiving your doctrine, you just move on. They don't want you. They don't want you to listen to your doctrine. Technically, just dust your feet and move on. So they're not going to be a people that going to follow you. That doesn't mean they did not receive you and feed you. They probably did, because it's culturally unacceptable not to host a guest, and you would be shamed in your community if you don't do that. So if you see a man of peace, it wasn't like somebody who's going to kick you out and shut the door in your face.
New
It's
York.
going to, yeah.
Right.
It's going to be somebody who's not going to receive what you're coming to teach,
Mhm.
the talking about the kingdom. But if you remember the story of the friend, the parable that Jesus said, he went to his friend at night, knocking on his door at midnight, say, hey, give me bread. So to have that form of dependence on your neighbors and family members is a known thing that was expected. And the response of that guy was like, hey, you're coming now, and how can you reject such a request? You can't. It was not a right thing that person would say, no, I'm not going to give you. He should give him, because we depend on each other. Now, there is an element, a book I like called Misreading Scripture and Individualist Eyes, where we look at everything from our prism, from our point of view, and we read the text in the Bible. And sometimes we could see things differently, but the depth of some examples are only known in a collective culture. And I think, like, I see stories in the Bible a little different than you. And it's nothing bad. I think the Bible has that ability to speak to us in all cultures. But I do see the story of Joseph in a different way than you do. I see the story of David and Goliath in a different view than you do. Because these stories are, in my perspective, shame, honor, culture, from loyalty to family, from these angles. I
So
don't
when
see.
when David's brothers said, "We know the naughtiness of your heart, David, just get back home and tend the sheep," that it was going to be a tremendous dishonor to them if he was the one, when he's challenging them, like, aren't you going to go fight Goliath? It's not it might not be a faith in God issue. He might not have been challenging them. That it might have been an honor dishonor issue.
Well, it's 2 points here. What you mentioned is correct. If he did good, his brothers would be shamed, because their youngest, out of the hierarchy of the family, the youngest is doing this, is winning, and we're not. That he's shaming us. But the other side is, when David went to fight Goliath, he was fighting for the honor of God, who said, who are you to come against our God?
Yeah.
So the battle was, I'm fighting for God's honor. I'm not fighting to win Israel, because I'm not an army. But how could you say that about my God? You cannot say that. So he was protecting God's honor. In a similar fashion, if you look at Joseph's story, the American version of it is that a boy who come from the pit to become the second man in command in Egypt. That's a great entrepreneur, American success story, right? Which
He
works.
came to be the COO of
Yes.
Potiphar's house.
Yeah, right.
Yes. And so it's a great story in the United States, and it affects people. It encourages people.
Sure.
When you read it in the Middle East, this is the arrogant boy that his father was giving him special treatment, which he did not earn, he did not deserve. And then he actually dreams about his brothers, his older, who should respect, serving him. Now he had to go through humiliation so he could learn the value of respecting his brothers, and to get the chance at the end to reunite the family. All the tricks he did at the end is to actually bring the whole family in. He want to reconcile the family. He was not upset at them. He was actually feeling, remembering what he have done to them. He was an arrogant young man. And mind you, these older brothers running the business of their father, they had already families and kids. They said, is this a boy is going to run all the family business? That's going to kill us. That's going to be a challenge.
Wow.
So they're scared of keeping this young man around them, and for their survival of their own families,
amazing.
they
That's
said,
so
"I
amazing.
want." Yeah,
That's so amazing. Brother Zar, let me read a couple of comments here. Gary Gauthier, that you may know, he's not far
Yes.
from you.
Yeah.
Gary Gauthier is talking about how that they're finding that this is so important, this is so valuable. He says powerful understanding that's so relevant to making multicultural disciples. Jeff Glick from the San Francisco Bay Area, he said, this is timely. This is what we're finding to be so exciting here in the San Francisco metro. Our discipleship community is learning to open their hearts and homes weekly to others. And once a home was open to them, he's talking about a person of peace. They weren't to depart. Chris put a link, by the way, to that book, Misreading Scripture with Western Eyes.
I would say the better one is the Misreading Scripture in Individualist Eyes. That came after, and that was actually much better.
Okay. So Misreading Scripture with Individualist Eyes. So how would you, so with those comments, and people are obviously very engaged today as the comments are coming through. There's I believe there's a missional opportunity, and I've divided it in my scribbly notes, that there's sort of a two-part opportunity. The first part of the opportunity is, as Chris said, there's a lot of people who are here in the United States, particularly those that are Gen Z, some millennials that they feel this burden. They want to make a difference. They want to have a missional life, that, so on and so forth. And likely the opportunities for them to express their burden in the Middle East will become increasingly difficult. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you could speak to that really the opportunity for the vast number of people that might be tuning into our podcast to do something about a burden, to express it, or to practice that burden in areas like Jordan, particularly. I know Jordan is much more open than a place like Syria, or maybe Lebanon, or some of these countries, maybe countries more in, the Arabian Rim area. Maybe very difficult to perhaps go there. Maybe potentially more as, like you mentioned, business people, and who understand how to live a missional life and go, not necessarily to live there and whatever. But so maybe there's a piece of that, but in a multicultural ministries, that the MCM, I was the North American missions director in Ohio for 13 years. And so I was part of North American missions before MCM became its own separate department from NAM.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that we often talked about was the fact that that it's very, very possible that in some of these cultures, particularly like one of the examples was China, that there are so many Chinese students in America today that they may be the ones who go back to, reside in that country of origin. And so what are your feelings about people today in the United States, particularly those who live among Middle Eastern populations and cultures here? So give us some insight now. I think we've got a mindset. We understand a little bit about a lot of those nuances So give us your insight. What should we do?
I love this question, and allow me to rant for a while. So,
Good. Yeah. You've
yeah,
got the floor.
The floor
okay.
is yours.
So, our young people specifically now, they're looking for a challenge and they're looking for opportunities. Given that they don't have the 9/11 trauma that a lot of my age people have, and they're also very tech savvy, and we do have now a huge view of the evangelistic arms of the UPC, that we are going global with our posts, with our media, with our podcasts. So there is I am involved with the missionaries in the Middle East, and I connect with them, and I've been there a few times. We're heading there again in November. We are trying to explore new areas that are close to the gospel. But I was trying to say there's a huge shift. First, apostolic presence need to be global, because even if you're in a local church and you feel like, hey, I got a campus close by, like Brother Gothier there, or I got like Brother Glick, I just sent him a connection with a Jordanian gentleman he's been caring for and connecting with. So that work in the local church will have global impact, because now the connectivity between people and their family members is open. So if we think that, hey, I have one family here, yes, but that one family that is in your church, whatever it is, if it's from the Middle East or from China, whatever it is, they will have contact with their homeland, and you do not know what the impact that would be. Part of what you mentioned is the students. Allow me to talk a little bit about campus ministry, because before COVID, we had 1 million international students who come and study in the United States. And that number is probably different now. But I can tell you, let's say there are 500,000. Most of the kids who can afford to come to the United States are either the sons of wealthy people or government connected people. And usually when they go back home with American degree, within 10 to 15 years, they will be leaders in their country. Imagine that you have somebody who received that power of God in our church, and then he's leading that country. And then what cover that will be for the missionaries? What grace that will be given to the believers, the converts? You cannot minimize now to say, oh, I want to win this family to come to start joining my church. No, our goal has to skip this local mentality to kingdom-wide purposes. And then when you connect with your Saudi friend, the Lord is going to use that, because we want to have connections in a country that is access challenged. I want people first to see the potential that every connection you make is so valuable. I'll give you one example, is me, my family. I'm one example of a family who came here on a 1-year contract. I was supposed to leave. Still, the pastor, Pastor Brian Jones, my pastor, invested in giving me Bible study for a whole year, knowing that I'm leaving back.
Wow. That's
But
awesome.
the Lord opened a door for us to stay, right? I was disciples, although I was going to be leaving. And I think we have to start seeing that our mission is global and the impact is global. It doesn't matter how small your church is, where you're located. This is out of the window. We are flooded with people from all over the world, especially countries who are not allowing people to have freedom of expression, freedom of religion. And we probably don't have a safe place to send a missionary. Now, if I'm connecting with people now, the world is so easy that the Jordanian fellow that I was connecting with, and he came to my church a few times in Ann Arbor, he's in San Francisco, close to Brother Glick right now.
Wow.
And they connected. I don't have to lose anyone that I reach out to. If you're going back to the Middle East, well, I got a missionary. I can connect you there. If you can't do either this or that, we can connect over Zoom. We went to Germany for the German-speaking nations to translate for Brother Bernard. He was meeting an Access Challenge nation figure, and he speaks Arabic, so we had to translate. And during that conference, a pastor from Vienna said, oh, we had a Jordanian lady attending our church for a couple of years, and then we just lost her. She's back in the country. This Jordanian lady now is getting a Bible study with my wife. And that Jordanian lady is a Muslim. And that Jordanian lady is becoming Christian. I mean, is coming back to Christianity. So there are no boundaries. And I do not say, well, this is hard to connect, hard to do. No, no, no. Everything. I was in St. Louis having dinner with Brother Martinez, with his Saudi family friends who were eating during Ramadan as an iftar in an apostolic minister's house in St. Louis. So there is no boundaries anymore, and our young people are hungry to do that. They want to do that. So what we're offering in Middle Eastern evangelism, in collaboration with Detroit Metro District, we launched a program. We call it Cultural learning and understanding with language training, so to can do relational evangelism. So there are two purposes of this program. One is I want to equip all North American young people to go and live in Dearborn, Michigan, to get exposed to the Middle Eastern culture. We will teach them about the cultural sensitivities. We'll teach them about Islam. We get them very affordable Arabic teachers to teach them Arabic if they want to have to know some greetings and stuff. And they will provide them with apostolic material that is in their own in Arabic or Persian. Out of that group, we have a group that come and visit, get exposure. We had an IBC group, students, 12 students came last month, and they got a whole week of training, a whole week of exposure to the Middle Eastern culture. But we're going to keep doing this regularly. But what we are doing in Middle Eastern evangelism is we want to equip our young people not just to stay in Dearborn and reach out to Muslims. No, we want them to go back to their own district. I want to go back to Tampa. I want to go to Dallas, to Houston, and start ministry there and become a NAM missionary, right? And I want you to be ready when you want to hit the global field as an aimer for a Access Challenge nation or a North African country, the Middle East. You go on the field and you're effective. You're not scared. You're not going there spending $20,000 to learn the culture and the language. No, we can get this done here for free, because technically, when you come and live and move to that area, you just get a job and rent a place. So your neighbors are Middle Eastern, your coworkers are Middle Eastern. You go to the class. We connect you with people that you can teach ESL. You can be an English teacher to Arabic speaker refugees. You can build connections and friendship. And you suddenly find yourself speaking to the family member in Syria that nobody can go to.
That's awesome.
That's so beautiful.
Amazing.
We had our next door neighbor. Excuse me. My allergies are kicking up today. Our next door neighbor is a urologist. He is from he's from the Middle East, and they had a large back in April. They had a large blow up Eid Mubarak blow up in front of their house.
Yes.
And so this is convicting. So I bring that up. I simply bring that up to say how valuable this is today to so many people who don't. I mean, here I am a minister who don't, beyond just courteous communication with my neighbor, haven't really been able to make much of a connection, just simply because in our minds we think, man, we're so far away. I mean, for crying out loud, we're celebrating Easter month and they're celebrating Eid Mubarak. And what do we have in common? And I think what you're talking about is to say, you never know. You never know where God might have situated you. You never know what God might be doing. And you never know what the power of prayer may do and how God might move to open up the hearts of people.
Allow me to say something. The connection, you are closer to your Muslim neighbor than to somebody who's far left progressive in your life view and your behavior and your practice of faith. Let me share with you a list of things that we have in common with Muslims that you will find yourself much more comfortable talking to them. And I'm not just as for you, it's just for everybody. First, one
But
God.
I'm going to take it from me.
Yes. So we have one God.
Okay.
We have respect to spiritual authority. We have respect to the Word of God, no matter what you believe the Word of God is. You have respect to family conservative values, which is we're pro-life. We're both believe in modesty. We do not engage in drinking and partying and drug use and marijuana. And we, in the same time, we have respect to spiritual authority, and we have respect to our elders, our mothers and fathers, and we do have tight responsibility to raise our kids in a good standing, citizens for the community, right? Because it's shameful for them to go to jail. It's shameful for you not to get an education. So when you look at all these, and the only reason the only reason some people vote to the progressive movement, it's not because they believe in it. It's because of the left has been supportive of the Palestinian cause, and I think that was the reason most people are supportive for brothers in the faith. So we believe in the brotherhood of the faith. They do believe in the brotherhood of the faith, right? So there's so much in common. The highlight I want to say here in an individualist culture is that you technically respect people as an individualist, and you respect their space and privacy. You do not want to impose on people. But you know how a collective see this? They see you not interested in them.
Wow.
So when you come, the way I connect with Middle Eastern people is so easy. They're the easiest people actually to connect with. And I can give you just a simple thing that I heard Brother Gaddy on this podcast actually mention. He said, ask genuine questions, open-ended questions. Ask about them, ask about their culture, ask about their faith, ask about their family. Just ask them. Now, if somebody comes to you and asks you these questions in an individualist community, you would feel like my bubble is being violated. I'm being
It's an
exposed.
interrogation, right?
Yeah, what are you doing? But in their culture, everybody's in their business. There are no boundaries. There are no bubbles. So he is used to get a phone call from his aunt every week, say, "Hey, are you going to have more kids? Why you're just having two kids? How much are you making? How much are you making? Can I get you to do this for me?" This is collective community. But the difference.
And by the way, his children, all day long, the kids are coming, the grandkids are there. We see them in the yard playing. And I'm convicted, Chris, I'm convicted today listening to this because he brought us a Ramadan meal as a gesture.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how to, I mean, we just said, thank you very much. And we waved, thank you,
Well,
and he was probably, it was a gesture. It was an act of generosity and neighborliness. And I didn't know how, I mean, Brother Zar, this is, I believe I'm communicating. I know you know this, and I know, but I'm just communicating to our listeners how here I am, and I'm just being vulnerable and transparent and open today because that's how I like to be best. But I'm just simply sharing that here is a medical doctor who lives next door to us, wonderful people, fine family, brought us a Ramadan meal to share, and I didn't respond in kind because I didn't know how to respond.
This is why I wanted Brother Azar to be on here, bro. This is why in our conversation, my mind was like he can tell you, I was like on the edge of my seat. My brain was going 1,000 miles, and there's so many things that correlate to like discipleship, our discipleship conversation, whatever. But this was one of the conversations was it's the individualistic versus collective cultures. What ends up happening is we like you just said, Brothers Art, we think we're showing respect, but it's being viewed as disinterest. The bigger gap is not all the things that we think it is. It's really the cultural differences that there were some things you mentioned, Brother Zar, about how easily we can offend people in a collective culture. You mentioned like
Yes.
if you come to my house and we order pizza in a collective culture, it's viewed like, you don't think that I'm worthy for you to cook a meal for me? Like, that's the expectation. You know what I'm saying? So, like, those are the gaps. If we can figure out how to close those gaps, and it's just people, but
Yes.
the gap is the cultural difference.
Hmm.
Yeah, me and my wife, we go to churches who are interested, and we do a 4 or 5 hour training session for the whole congregation on a Saturday morning or so to fill all these cultural, traps, right?
Yeah.
So what your neighbor did, brother Ken, is that he gave you a gift because first he gets honor in his community by honoring his neighbor. That's one. Second thing, if you reciprocate with a gift similar to that, he would know that you can be friends. So, and he would not bring you this offering if you're not actually qualified to be a friend. How do you qualify to be a friend? You don't drink, you're not loud, you're not cussing, you live an apostolic life. He thinks that we could be actually friends because we can align on a lot of social values where if I send my kids to your home, I know they're not going to have alcohol. They're not going to see pornography. They're not going to be allowed to yell at each other and beat each other. So I think your environment is similar to mine. So I gave you that offering to say, well, this is a gift from me. I value you. And this is part of the indirect communication of the collective culture. And we haven't been into that realm of it, but it's a few hours of training. But that gift that he gave you, I think the best way is to reciprocate and bring them a gift. Doesn't have to be food, but it's good to be food. But it has to be halal food. And you
Yes.
would have, or you can say, you are very generous. We like you as friends. I would like you to come to my house for dinner, and we will bring food from halal meat, or we will cook with halal products, or I can cater food from a Middle Eastern place so you can enjoy it. Because most people would refuse the invitation because they don't want to tell you I have food restrictions. And how can I explain to you that it's not just the meat that's halal? It's actually, you cannot use lard, you cannot use alcohol, you cannot use even vanilla on your dessert because vanilla has alcohol in it. The list of restricted food is so long, so most people will get a no for the invitation. So when we reciprocate, the next time he would say, well, I want you to come to my house. And if we don't reciprocate, this is an indirect communication saying, I do not want to have the relationship.
Hmm.
Let's say you invited me to your house, brother Ken, and I came, and then I'm waiting for you to tell me I would like to visit you back. If you don't tell me that, this is an indirect sign that you do not want to continue the relationship, and it's a polite way of doing it because we don't want to offend each other. So the indirect communication is very silent. It's almost like a silent auction where you don't know what's going on. But if you know the rules of the game, which is what culture is the unwritten rules of behavior, and your unwritten rules of behavior in your house, in your country, in your culture, is completely different than what he does in his home. Although you both have a very close values. In values, you're close, but your behavior, the rules of behavior are different. So if I come to your house, brother Ken, and you say, "Hey, let's sit here, let's feed the kids, and then we can enjoy our meal together. Please help yourself, fill your plate." You just offended me twice. You're
Huh.
being hospitable. You're being very nice. But the fact that you tell me go fill your plate is that if you
Serve
come to my
yourself.
house, yeah, if you come to my house, no, I serve you.
Yeah.
I put you the best food on the plate. I bring it to your desk. You don't have to leave. And you don't help with the cleaning too. I mean, this is no, no, no. And then you don't feed the kids first because it's hierarchical structure where the respect goes to the elders. The elders eat first and the kids will eat later if there's any leftovers. And that hierarchical structure is biblical, and it's a collective, and we actually practice it in our churches. When you have a district superintendent coming in, and we do that, but and the rest with other people we don't. So we actually flip between cultural, give respect to whose respect is due, and then we flip it back and forth with the American culture. So we are actually, if we act biblically and we open our homes and we practice hospitality, which is philoxenos, which is love of strangers.
Yes.
And
Yes.
we don't mix it up with fellowship, which is koinonia, because fellowship is when you meet with people that you share the same faith. But philoxenos is when you meet people who have a different faith or a different background. So all these things, if we understand the differences, we live actually biblical apostolic life, we find ourselves naturally gravitating to collective communities.
Mm.
So we are best suited to reach them. We are inherently biblically based and we want to follow that. But what we fight is a certain aspect of the individualist culture where we are not used to open our homes. We're not used to spend a lot of time with people. We shrunk discipleship into a class instead of living in a home together and spending time. And come with me to the hospital, I want to show you, we're going to pray for this brother. Hey, come with me to this men thing, we're going to be doing this and that. Jesus did hands-on training and hands-on discipleship, but because we are a very individualist community, we said let's shrink discipleship to 1 hour and maybe fit in 10 people in this room together. But the main part of discipleship is actually to have an interaction. I'm teaching this young man a Bible study. We never been to the first class. Every time I said, do you have a question? Yes. I'm talking about dating. I want to ask about this. I want to ask about that. That's discipleship. We
Yeah.
call it Bible study in the US just to, because there were no Bible studies in the time of Jesus, right? There were no sessions that, hey, let me teach you the scripture. I mean, it was all during the practice.
Yeah.
And that also goes along with what we call holistic
Yeah.
communities.
Yeah.
Collective
As
cultures
you
are
as
holistic.
you go.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
The parables are stories. The examples of let's go pray, let's heal the sick, let's cast out demons. It's hands-on training.
Mhm.
Now, I can tell you the American educational system, which is more of an inductive way of thinking,
Wow.
reasoning, is different than the deductive thinking that we use in the Middle East or collective communities. So the way I learn personally, I like to watch a video. I like to get a story. I like to get somebody to show me, right? You are learned in a more philosophically, open area where in American school, you are learned for abstract thinking. So you are more comfortable with Paul's teaching in the Greek way, where you can tell me you are saved by grace through faith. It's like, for me, what does that mean?
That's so good.
Right,
This is
right.
more of a
Brother Zar, it's interesting what you're saying here, and this is so funny, Chris, because as I'm listening, I realize that we talk about Jesus culture, and the Jesus culture is, I mean, is a collectivist culture. It is, I mean, the marriage supper of the Lamb. We're
yeah.
going to be inducted into the kingdom culture by having a collectivist meal. That's pretty amazing. And I think that we feel like sometimes we feel like not in a boastful way, in a very humble way. We talk about and we very humbly try to address some of those things that you're talking about, where discipleship in America has been sort of a new converts class. We want to make you a member. You need to know the things you need to know, and we say, goodness, we're missing this entire aspect of disciple making, which is the as you go. Life will present the opportunities. Struggle will present the opportunities. Tension and trouble will present the opportunities to bring the answers of the better way of Jesus. And we feel like we're on the cutting edge. We feel like we're at the tip of the spear, and you're basically saying, no, actually, you're returning to the way it really is should be done. And one of the things that we talk about is Chris and I talk a lot about in Western thinking, even the Greek, sort of the Hellenistic, right? Greco-Roman Hellenistic way of thinking was sort of, if you want new behaviors, you need to give people new information. And so Chris and I actually do a deal in discipleship where we talk about, there's a circle at the top, and this is the new information. This is the better information. And then there's another bubble at the bottom, and this is new behavior. And sort of the Greek philosophers kind of believed if we can download new information and new understanding and abstract ideas, then eventually it'll make its way into people's behavior. And one of the things that we talk about is that there's always a lag, and the lag between the new information and the new behavior, that lag is actually, we just say, well, that's just the way it is, but actually it's a lag between what you express that you believe and how you actually behave. And that I believe, I'm just personally saying this, and I just feel for whatever reason to mention this in this moment, and I'd love for you to comment about this, but I believe that lag between what we say we believe and how we actually behave creates cognitive dissonance, where either the answer is that 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 we have to bury a feeling of hypocrisy, that I say I believe something but I'm not really behaving that way, or that somehow I've got to change what I believe to actually match how I behave, because for years and years and years I haven't. Where the reality is that the Jesus culture was, if you love me, you will keep my commandments. That you are a disciple to the degree that what you believe overlaps with your behavior. And to me, this is so critical, particularly in our culture, to shift our disciple making to what you're talking about, for those very reasons.
This is wonderful. And let me preface by saying your worldview determines your beliefs, and then that will reflect on culture. Culture is what you do, right? How you behave. Do you open your home or you don't open your home? Well, that's based on your belief, is that I want to reach souls and I want to change. But it's also based on your worldview, which means that this is how I see the world. I see the world that we're all separate and I'm trying to reach this person or that person. So the change in behavior, I agree with you completely. It has to come in from the change of belief. The problem that we're having here, we are as apostolics in a conflict because we want to follow a set of behaviors that are done in the Middle East 2,000 years ago because we want to follow Jesus, right? So we have an example of a behavior, of a culture that we want to get to, but we are living in a completely different set of behaviors.
Absolutely.
Okay? And how can I change that behavior? I need to go back actually to the Bible and the reason why I'm doing this. And I agree with you. You have to teach, but there is a spiritual revelation component to it that is just telling me that I need to open my home. And then I go home and I was like, well, I have one room here. It's messy. It's not clean. I don't know how to cook. I don't have time. I'm working 2 shifts. What is the practical application to this? The problem is American culture is so, in a sense, self-centered, is that it is very expensive financially and time-wise to disciple people.
Mm-hmm.
It is very expensive. So when I lived in the United States and I have the means to go kayaking and then travel over the weekend and then do this and then have a hobby and I can afford a hobby, now I invite people to church and I'm hoping someone else will take them home and disciple them, and hopefully the pastor would pray them through. But I have achieved my goal and I brought them to church. Because we have summarized the function of the saints for a long time, I think, in the US. Your job is to bring people to the building.
Absolutely.
And the pastor will disciple them, and the Sunday school teacher will take care of their kids, and someone else will deal with that, right? So we have abdicated that responsibility because it's convenient. It is costly. I tell people, you want to make disciples, it's going to cost you time and money. You're going to pay them for coffee, get them in a meal. You're going to stop working overtime. You're going to meet them. You're going to drive. But if you're not going to do, if you're not willing to do that, then you're not a follower of Jesus Christ. I mean, the only commission we have, the only job we have on earth is to make disciples of all nations, right? Baptize them, telling them about repentance and all that. So if we think our job is to go to church and check the box, I think because we want to live the American dream, the American culture,
Yes.
and I want to make the money and travel, have a hobby, then I'm not really doing the action that shows that I have the faith. Show me.
Excuse me, and you're proving that you're following a different set of values, which proves that you're a part of a different culture. Because because what you just said is in a collectivist culture, the mindset is I'm going to adhere to the values of my people. I'm going to adhere to the value of my tribe. I'm going to adhere to the values of those people who I value the most. And so you're saying, and I love what you're saying, because ultimately what you're saying is if we as Americans say, well, I value my independence, I value my time, I value
Yes.
I value doing things my own way. I don't really want to mess with that. That's dirty. That's whatever. Let me just, I'll try to grow the church, which is again just another form of American consumerism. Like we enjoy, do we prefer to go to Target, or do we prefer to go to, it's a choice of like, do I want something that's got, because the bigger we can get it, then the more we can have all the stuff. We can have all the programs, we can have all the services, we can have the big departments, and we can have a bigger building and all the things. And I would like to go to a church like that. And so really it's just another, sometimes church growth can just be another expression of our Americanism and our consumerism. And I'm getting excited and I need to calm down. But I think that it's an example of what you're saying is if you're not willing to say, I'm going to put those values on the altar so that I can pick up a value system that produces another and operates in another kind of cultural context, am I really part of that kingdom? And am I really part of that culture?
And I think the motive is different. You can have lost people in the collective culture. You know why? Because I am connecting with people because I want to depend on them for me.
Sure.
Self-focused. In the individualist culture, I do not want to give my time to people because I'm focused on me. Right? So both need to die to self to get.
So they both need to be redeemed. Jesus
Yeah.
said, if any man come after me, he must deny himself.
Whether you're from individualist or collective, it doesn't matter.
Wow.
Yes.
Golly, I got goosebumps. That's
So
a
good.
revelation, brother. Oh my goodness.
So the challenge is we're not dead to ourselves. In the US, you have so much distraction on your own self and ability, what you can do, and your hobbies and things. In the collective community, your time is taken to entertain and keep relationships with the family so they can take care of you. But both ways, you are self-centered.
Man, I appreciate that so much because our experience, what you're talking about, this is why we're the Mobilized Church Network. Because what we found was, for us, we've defined mobilization is just getting embedded in your world, which is what you're talking about. We've tried to reach people from an arm's length distance with either information or invitation, bring them to church or just give them information. And we've said, before you can really do that, you have to get truly embedded in your world. And if we're being really transparent, one of the biggest challenges is it feels like you're swimming upstream so hard against the cultural tidal wave of individualism, and it almost at times feels a little bit insurmountable, because how do we push back against an entire nation that's built on this culture? But what you just said is so powerful, is the individualism has to die, whether it's collective or individual culture. The selfishness, not individualism, the selfish, self-absorbed, self-centered perspective, which is the very beginning piece of discipleship anyway. I got to lay down my life. I've got to surrender to his ways. So good.
To change the behavior of people, you need to change their worldview, right?
Yeah.
What is the worldview that I have? Is that I'm a sinner. I need to die. There's nothing good in me. I need Jesus to work on me. Then I need to go tell people about the gospel, right? So that death component is, if it's not there, then your worldview and everything that you do is going to be based on that. So you can go to church and feel good about yourself, but that doesn't mean that your worldview about who life is and what eternity is, who Jesus is, that doesn't mean it changed. And I think if we're not doing it, if we're not behaving like it, then we didn't actually have a change in our worldview. And when we try to change people's behavior based on the culture that they have, so I can go to church and say, hey, church, we're individualist. You need to go and open your home to get people in, and house to house, apostolic house to house. But if that's it, I'm trying to change culture, which is changing a behavior, but I haven't changed the worldview that generates that behavior. What
Yeah.
is the worldview? So
Yeah.
you still have to preach that you need to die to yourself, and it's not you that you live, but Christ lives in you, and then He got a great commission. So I would love to tell people about Great Commission every day, but this is how you should behave, right? But I
Yeah.
need a preacher to tell them why you should behave this way.
My
What's the motive?
goodness.
The motive is not there yet. Then you can drag these people all the way to all the events you want them to go to, but the worldview is not changed.
Wow.
Yeah.
Brother
That's so
Zar,
good.
Dr. James Littles told our church, do you know him? Do you know Dr.
Yes.
Littles?
Not
Yeah.
no. I've been in his services.
Yeah.
Great.
Dr. Littles told our church, he said, if you have a hard time getting people to serve in the church, whatever you call it, nursery, he said, I'm not talking about a toddler Sunday school class. If you have a hard time finding people to serve in the church nursery, he said, you don't have a volunteer problem. You have a valuing your children problem.
Hmm. Yeah.
But that's an example. I think that's such a great example of that that if you don't change your worldview, if you don't change your values, if you don't even know the lens that you're looking through, then you could say, well, we have a volunteer problem here. We need to really bolster, the need and the importance of volunteering. And we need to, and you may even talk about, people are going to be in service and sometimes they have children, and it's going to be good that their children can go and they can hear the word of the Lord but ultimately he said at the heart of it, it's not a volunteerism issue. It is you don't value the children issue. And I think these are the kinds of things that man, if we could really get to a point where we see things the way Jesus sees things. It's not that, and what I've gotten from this today is there's elements of a collectivist culture that are so valuable. There's elements of, there's elements of individualism of where people say, I'm responsible for me, and
Yeah.
regard, a beauty of an individualist culture is, my whole family are drunks and alcohols. I'm not saying this personally. I'm just saying theoretically or hypothetically, someone could say, my whole family are alcoholics and whatever, but you know what? I'm breaking the cycle. I don't care.
Exactly.
Well, we don't like, you don't come and drink with us anymore. You don't, you know what? Nope, I'm not going to do that because I'm making a change. And so it gives them the ability to break out of the mold, which is beautiful because it breaks generational curses. But at the end,
pioneer spirit, Brother Zar mentioned, like the pioneer spirit, the missionary spirit comes from
The
individualism.
giving, the volunteering. These are not something that is done in a collective culture. So I can tell you the only negative thing about the individualist culture that I'm focused on, and because there's a lot of good things like funding missionaries and coming out of certain denominations without the fear of, hey, I don't care. I was Presbyterian, I was whatever, I was still going to go to apostolic. That does not happen in collective cultures. It's very hard. So the collective cultures have a significant set of problems that I talk about, because especially when you pastor them, there's a lot of issues. I probably mentioned a little bit to Brother Chris, but there are a lot of issues. So the two cultures are not great. I'm just trying to say, for the purposes of evangelism and discipleship, the individualist cultures is in a disadvantage. And and I'm not trying to say that you need to become a collective. No, it's just to reach people from a different collective community, because your method is working for an American. You have the same culture, you know how to deal with each other. He does not want to see you every week. He's happy with a text. He's happy with a quick phone call. He doesn't want the pastor to drop in every month. He's fine. But for a collective, it's a big issue.
Yeah.
If there is a major event in the family and you don't show up, you don't have to even be invited. You have to show up. This is what signals to them that I'm here supporting you. Even if you don't want me to, I will. Even when I invite you for dinner, if you get invited by a collective and say, I'm busy, maybe let's have another time, they get offended. Why? Because you're not prioritizing a relationship with them. So there are traps in these connections. And I'm trying to focus my attention today and say, If you want to reach, as an individualist, a collective culture, and there's a huge potential for it because they're looking for families, they're looking for connections, and they're sending you food, they want to meet you, they want to send you a gift. All these things are signals to say, I would love to be your friend. But if we don't read that behavior as a invitation for friendship, we will miss the opportunities, and we can actually offend people unintentionally. So the educational part of this culture gap thing is not really for us to have an exciting time learning about culture. It's the last thing I want to teach about culture. I mean, I'm a physician. I've nothing to do with social science at all. But I felt like when in my church, when I called a friend at one evening and we were lonely as immigrants, no one, no hobby, no money to do anything, said, can we come over this evening to visit with you? And they said, well, I'm sorry, we just planned a family night tonight, and can we get a rain check? And I felt like he stabbed me because he just told me all what I heard is that you're not family to me. I did not understand baseball enough to know what rain check is. I did not understand that he was telling me, hey, let's do it another time. It did not register to me because I'm from a different culture, and I didn't understand what that sentence meant. So all what I heard, you're not family to me, because I'm meeting with my family today, and I consider them family. I had them in my house, eating in my house, sleeping in my house, and then you respond this way to me. I mean, we're still friends, but the issue is you can avoid a lot of offenses and obstacles when you reach a collective community, that you can build friendship faster, you can discipleship people, you can get them involved in the kingdom way faster than keep walking in these traps, and there's a high chance you would lose them completely on the way, unintentionally. And the problem is they won't tell you why, and you will not going to learn why. And so we still in that phase of, I don't know what happened, but they stopped. They probably found another church or didn't like me. But so I didn't learn anything in that interaction. I lost that opportunity. So I do believe that we need to bridge that gap. It has to be intentional. We have to say, this is our harvest. 30% of the UPC is now multicultural. We do know that the growth in the last 5 years in the UPC has been in the immigrant population. If we are ignoring this, we're not going to grow. And I can tell you, I had the similar situation. I had to be delivered like the disciples did when they pushed away the kids in front of Jesus. I was thinking, why do we invest in the children ministry so much? I'm coming from a hierarchical structure. Why do we spend so much time and money on children? Then, and it was a revelation to me that apostolic faith is one generation away from being gone. Just one generation. If we don't have kids in the church, when we die, it's done, right? So I felt like, Lord, how did I miss this? But it was a revelation.
Wow.
He changed my culture supernaturally. So, and I would believe that when people come into the church with their collective culture, the goal is not to accommodate them all the way because they have problems like I had, but we want to move them to a biblical culture. So
kingdom culture.
Kingdom culture, exactly. So if we can meet on that culture, you know why? Because it's in the Word of God, and you're not forcing your American culture on me, and I'm not asking you to adjust completely to my culture. So let's meet in a kingdom culture that is fitting the way we interact, the way we apologize to each other, the way we behave with kids and women, the way we interact with sinners and believers, and opening our home or not, or giving. All these issues can be solved in the kingdom culture. The problem with collective, they feel, is that when I want to go to an individualist community like an apostolic church, they're going to make me separate from my kids like Americans do. They're going to make me probably leave my community because I'm converting from the Catholic Church to apostolic. Then I'm going to lose my family and friends. I don't want to do that. So if we tell them, hey, please keep your connections with your family because you want to reach them. Please, if you have an event on a Sunday morning that has family members and Catholic Church event, go to that. It's okay to miss church one day. It's okay we'll come to your home. If you have a birthday, the pastor would come and you invite your family. I want to know your family, your brothers and sisters who are Catholic, and I want to meet them. I want to become friends of your family members. I want to be invited to their events. So eventually, when we have that trust built, which is in that collective culture, trust is built on these social events, then we can actually start talking open questions and having answers and sharing them things about the Lord. And it doesn't have to be like a chart Bible study. It's just talking about the Lord, talking about God. So all these opportunities, it has a shift, a change in the apostolic church, that we're not requiring people to check the box, and if they're not showing up to every event, that we don't trust them, we don't use them, or we think they're not serious, or if they come late to certain events, then they're not serious or they're disrespectful. There's a cultural background to this that we have to understand when we deal with collectives. And soon enough, I think the collectives would be more than 50% of our churches. And if we're not figuring this out now, we're not going to grow. That's the pathway to growth numerically in our churches. The sad part is, I don't want white churches to be growing separate than the churches who are Filipino. Right? I want them to grow together. I don't want them to be separate. And if you go to MCM, Filipino evangelism, they teach their people to reach Americans. He said, hey, we're not here just reaching Filipinos. We do not want to have a Filipino church. We want to have an apostolic, diverse church that reflects the community. There are 11 Filipino churches in Toronto alone.
Wow.
But when you go to their churches, they're reaching out the Canadians, the French speaking, the English speaking, everybody.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
So it's easier for the collective to reach others. So evangelism is not an issue for them. The problem with them, with the collective, is gossip, and the problem is hierarchical structure and disrespect to younger people, and blocking the young to minister. And you have to have a certain understanding or education or lineage or whatever. So there are a set of problems there. I'm not trying to say it's perfect,
so good,
but we have to work together and find a church structure that is kingdom-based, culture-based, that the governor of this system is biblical, and then no matter where you come from Jordan, Philippines, China, and America, we are governed by this set of behaviors and rules. Because technically, we don't do what Paul said, greet each other with a holy kiss, do we?
Right.
We have an American way of greeting in our apostolic churches. We say that we are biblical based, but we don't take everything literally, right?
That's so true.
So we've
turned it into the holy fist bump.
So we created, believe it or not, there is an apostolic American culture in the apostolic church. And if we think this is kingdom culture, then we're missing it, because there's a lot of collective values we don't practice. So these people, when they come to our churches, they actually help us with that part of the collective culture.
Very good.
They will be our evangelists. They will be our outreach directors. They're going to be helping us in hospitality and all the events. And they're going to be the team that tear down and build up. And they're going to be the people excited about these events and the park. And you're not going to have to drag them there. They're excited to be there. So Brother Bernard said that the churches who've been there for 3-4 generations will benefit from a spark of revival that comes in from a fresh immigrant who just received the Holy Ghost, who is excited to be part of the kingdom, who's bringing different dynamics and different challenges to the church. It just revives that church.
Sure.
Because these third generation apostolics, they were born into this, they haven't seen that interaction. Yeah, so I love that the survival of the apostolic faith depends on us reaching out to the collective communities, because they will bring a value that we're missing, and we can help them with things that they're also missing. So we can together grow as a strong apostolic faith. And from there, you can send an apostolic, born again guy from Syria all the way to reach out to his community.
It's beautiful. This is so awesome. And it's amazing as you're talking how God has led us on this journey.
Yeah.
And, a lot of the things you're talking about are things that we never put in the context of individualistic versus collective cultures and whatever, but a lot of the principles and the concepts, as he was talking, I was thinking about the depth of conversation depends on the level of relationship,
Yeah.
which is dependent on how much trust you build with that person and
Yes.
whatever. So, man, there's so many good things. Thank you, Brother Zar, for being here today and just sharing this. This is somebody commented and said this is the
Yeah.
best podcast episode that we've had. So really appreciate that. Before we go, I do want to just share a couple pieces of information. If I forget anything, just let me know. But want to direct people to, you have a Facebook page for Middle Eastern evangelism. And as you're talking there, highlight Middle Eastern evangelism. But you said something to me a few weeks ago when we were there, and you mentioned again today. But like, there's just the overwhelming majority of cultures are collective. So this is not just Middle Eastern. There are most of the people that we're going to come in contact, Latino, even African American culture.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's very collective. But for you, you've got a Facebook page, Middle Eastern Evangelism. I put a link on Facebook that people can connect with that. And then I also put a link. You have a conference coming up, the Multicultural Summit in North America, August 1st through the 3rd. That will be at the Solid Rock Church of Ann Arbor. And some great speakers lined up for that, the Woodward, the Bernard, the Chavis. And so definitely want to make that available to people. There's all that information. We'll get that out. So just, I don't know, Ken, you want to close us out today?
Man, I just want to say to all of our listeners today that there are so many things, I think, as you listen through and you process a lot of what we talked about today. I think the bottom line, Chris and I had a conversation the other day while we were getting ready for the meeting that we just ministered at, and I asked him if I'd sent him an article. I have an article that I'd written called "Do You Have a Missional Culture or a Jesus Culture?" And I think that Jesus culture does mission as a natural product of being part of the Jesus culture. Missional culture doesn't necessarily mean that I think these are the kinds of things that this conversation present to us that cause us to recognize, Brother Azar, we had a podcast recently about, are you convinced or just closed-minded? It was one of our recent podcasts. Are you a person who's convinced, or are you just a person who's closed-minded? And they're miles apart, a million miles apart. And I think today what we learned, to all of our listeners, I think that what we learned today is an awareness and an understanding that there is a vibrant revival that is moving into America, that we must not align ourselves politically. We must not align ourselves. We must not be influenced by political sound bites. Because it can produce xenophobia. It can produce in us a mindset, a mentality of us versus them.
Yes.
This beautiful understanding that we could benefit from cultures that come in, and of course they could benefit from us, and together as we pursue the Jesus culture together, I think that we're going to find that it is part of God's end time harvest that brings all of these pieces together for one great final climax of what God wants to do before his return. So, Brother Zar, thank you so much for being with us today. Your words and insight on this podcast today are invaluable. And as has been expressed by so many of our comments, and your work that you do in your local church and beyond with multicultural ministries is also invaluable. We value you today, first as a brother, and then secondly, the work that you do.
I appreciate that very much, and I'm honored to be here, humbled to be here. You guys are doing a great work for the kingdom. It is not easy to find a good apostolic podcast, and I'm glad I found you guys. And I just want to say also, for people who are concerned about immigration, I am concerned about immigration. Vote your conscious what's best for the country, but also you have to see that the Lord is going to use these opportunities. And historically, I know that Mexico had the gospel, the apostolic message through people deported from this country, and I do believe that God determined where people are, the timing and the location, as in Acts 17. So let's use this opportunity. They're here. They can check your paperwork. They can deal with the government as later on, but let's get them the gospel as soon as possible. And I do believe the urgency in the kingdom now is doesn't give us the luxury as ministers to take side politically, because we will alienate a harvest that it is not
Yes.
our. We don't have that permission, really. We're not supposed to alienate anyone, and for other countries they cannot go and have mission. We are blessed that we can go the mission field to the next street, to the next part of town, and that is an awesome opportunities. You don't have to pack and sell everything and go and sacrifice your safety and convenience. You can do mission work out of your house in the United States. And what an honor, what a privilege to fulfill the Great Commission of all nations without the heartache and the risk and the cost. So I hope that our audience would see this as an opportunity.
Wonderful. Thank you, Brother Zar, for being so gracious with your time. We really appreciate that, and I'm sure we'll be connecting again soon.
Yes.
Definitely want you to get connected with you some more. So we appreciate everybody that joined us today. All the great comments. We did get one question about Great Lakes Youth Convention, and yes, that is coming up July 31st in Fort Wayne, Indiana. You can check it out, GreatLakesYouthConvention.com, I believe. It's .com. I can tell you. Actually, it's .org. GreatLakesYouthConvention.org. Check out all the information there. Thank you again for joining us today. Appreciate everybody being a part. We look forward to coming back to you next Tuesday around 10 o'clock. Until then,